Uh, get it? How's my hair? That's a funny joke, huh? Well, thank you guys.
Use it. I cannot use it.
For sure, right?
Not anymore.
Well, thank you guys for joining this. I think this is like the third or fourth edition of this Wise Crowds Liberating Structures design call. Let me give you guys a link to the doc that we're going to be working from so that everybody is hip to that once I get it, so that we can all sort of work together towards an actual outcome. We did this the first couple times without the doc, and it was a really delightful conversation, for the sake of having great conversations, which I'm about. But working with the doc will just help us actually develop a string, perhaps, or two. What I'd like to do is kick off with a round of impromptu networking, just to sort of get everybody's lips warmed up. We've got 5 people, so that'll be 3-ish rooms. And the invitation is there on the doc. But let me see if I can reinforce that. So there's a couple different invitations. One is, how long have you been doing this liberating structures thing? One is, what's your favorite liberating structure? I would encourage everybody to also sort of bookmark a liberating structure that they would like to learn more about. And we'll see if we can weave that into the course of the call today. And impromptu networking, for anybody unfamiliar, is just going to be a series of different one-on-one conversations of about 5 minutes in length. Those 5 minutes are going to fly by in very short duration, so do keep that in mind. So share your time, yada, yada, yada. And I think that's good enough for now, safe enough to try. Let's see. Auto close breakouts after 5 minutes. Yep. Cool, awesome. And countdown. Oh, why not? An extra minute of countdown, never hurt anybody. All right, and you should be invited to join a breakout. Oh. And I guess I will just sit here all by myself. Oh, shit. That means I'm gonna have to edit video. Or not. Would you forgive me if I just talk to you for 5 minutes? Random internet human, internet bot, I suppose, as well as possible. Let's not be humanist. I did delight myself there. Oh, yeah. No, I'll definitely have to edit this, huh? So what's my name? My name is Jeremy Akers, Jeremy Nathaniel Akers. I host Liberating Structure stuff. I'm super interested in shared thinking, like networking people's brains together, and liberating structures are phenomenal tools of doing so, and that excites me. Normally for like a workshop or a meeting, something I'm hosting, I would expect to spend like 3 hours of prep and planning for every hour worth of meeting. And unless I'm partnered up with somebody who has a meaningful fluency in liberating structures, then we can cut all that prep and planning down to like 30 minutes for like a 90-minute meeting, which is life transforming compared to 4.5 hours of preparation. It just feels incredible. It's amazing. I like it. And I want to spend more time with more people in that sort of creative generation or generative creativity. I think that sounds a little nicer. Yeah, I have a love affair with syllables. I apologize for that for any of my non-native English speaking friends out there. So to that end, I'm very interested in growing the amount of people who are familiar with liberating structures and increasing the fluency of everybody who is familiar with liberating structures. So not only more new people using liberating structures, but also stronger, like flex your muscles liberating structures users, right? So that we can do this awesome, like creative juiciness in our planning sessions. And so this call is one, like basically all of my activity in the community, an attempt to hopefully create more of that goodness, more fluency and familiarity with new users, which is why I'm particularly interested in uploading these calls, since it is a very practical space that we're into, because I think we can create artifacts that can, again, help people learn. So yeah, that's me. My favorite structure is probably Wise Crowds at this current moment. Wise Crowds is by far and away, I think, the most flexible structure. Just as a point of discussion, all liberating structures are tools for particularly shared thinking. So shared thinking tools that over time sort of become a way of moving through the world, a way of living, just a way of being, actually. And so Wise Crowds it gives me, is the most broad-based tool, because this question of paradox that is Wise Crowds. So Wise Crowds, let me explain it, invites you to pose your challenge in a particular format, which is how do we A and B at the same time? So what are apparently contradictory yet also complementary forces? So we're looking for a tension field that is, again, generative. An example that comes up in a lot of work with like agile development teams is how do we reliable, consistent, delivery focused, and innovative. So how are we efficient and innovative at the same time? Efficiency is great, get lots of shit done. Innovation is also awesome. Create new things. And so there's a tension between those two. So how might we be innovative and efficient at the same time? But this pattern that is paradox, that is Wise Crowds, also is a general tool for thinking in this way of like, all right, so how do I go from this either efficiency or innovation paradigm to how do I get both? How do I get both efficiency and innovation at the same time? And to answer that question, like even to entertain that question, requires that you zoom out of the either or and start looking for that in between space, right? Efficiency, innovation, your standard Venn diagram stuff, looking for that third space. And to answer that question effectively requires more resolution. So a perspective that is able to contain more complexity and deal with more nuance. So that's my favorite structure. What's up, guys?
Hola.
Hello.
I hope that was life affirming. I'm gonna do like this, and then we're gonna do it again, because that's how impromptu networking rolls. So how long you been doing this liberating structures thing? What's your favorite structure? Is there anything you want to learn? Yada, yada, yada. Talk amongst yourselves. Talk amongst yourselves. So here we are again. I gotta admit, this feels a little weird for me too. Can you feel the awkwardness? Awkwardness always reminds me of that scene from Batman. What is it, like the second Batman movie, the one with Bane, right? Where Bane is like beating on Batman. Is like, you thought darkness was your ally, but you're just a visitor to the darkness. I was born in the darkness. That's the way I feel about awkwardness, when I was born in the awkwardness. So yeah, paradox wicked questions, super dope. It's great to drop a wicked question whenever you hear yeah, but in the room. So whenever you can hear the conversation sort of drifting towards either or, and two people are sort of fighting over the soul of which side of the conversation gets discussed and gets air and breathing room and attention. And both sides are also not interested in just waiting, ironically, not interested in just like, okay, you talk out your side and then I'll talk out my side. But those explicit rules of the game are helpful for that. So to drop a wicked question into that mix, go, hey, yo, how is it that we, talk about A and B at the same time? Is there a way that we can bring these topics together? Is there a way that we can address both concerns that are represented in these topics together? Was there a solution to the answer that we're discussing that satisfies both instead of prioritizing just one? Life affirming again, and to start thinking about, right, just to interrupt this pattern of either or. Last time Elise mentioned that she would like to talk about what I need from you. That was a structure she wanted to get more information on. And I continue to think about that request because there was actually an interesting opportunity in Baya's design brief to use what I need from you. So walking the dog, of course, this comes to mind. I go, oh shit. So let me break that down. So Baya had this design brief about, fucking up in workshops and then, not wanting to cop to it and adjust or do anything, just sort of wallpapering over the oops and continuing to carry on bravely. What I need from you is a pattern that has a lot of, seems like it's very complicated. Basically, you have different groups, representatives from those different groups show up in a central space, carrying with them questions that have been formed from the different groups. So you're in different groups, Group A and Group B. Group A thinks about requests, what I need from you that they want to make of Group B. And Group B thinks about requests. 2 is a good guideline that they want to make of Group A. And then representatives come together and say, hey, what we need from you is number 1 and number 2. And Group B says, what we need from you is number 1 and number 2. And then those representatives go back to the groups and they say, hey, these were the requests that we received. What are we going to give our counterparts in response? And there are 4 possible answers. The 4 possible answers are 1, yes, you got that. We can give you that. Number 2, no, we can't give you that. Number 3, I don't know. I don't know what you mean particularly. Your question was vague, ambiguous. I don't even know how to answer that. And then the third option, the coward's way, I will try. Perfectly legitimate in most circumstances, but it's still a little ambiguous. The tech here is to stick to one of those 4 answers and to just roll with it. So we get to practice asking clear questions, making clear requests, and giving unambiguous answers. So after the groups have deliberated, we come back together and they say, hey, in response to request 1, yes. Response 2, no. In response to request 1, yes. In response to request 2, I don't know what you mean. And then we go back, we would go back and then we debrief. All right, what's the consequence, the implication of that answer? And when I first used this structure, I thought it was a practical thing, like for coordination, and I've used that way, and it works. It's also a way of ritualizing conflict, because what we're doing is we're pouring our requests into simple yes or no questions. We're giving only a yes or no response. So think about that. All right. And last but not least, Emily, you have yet to talk to Marta, right?
I haven't talked to Marta.
All right, cool. Then let's make that happen.
Cool.
So yeah, ritualizing conflict. So you can imagine that this opportunity that we're creating with all of this sort of hubbub and rigid structure gives us the opportunity to bring up things that we really, really want, but maybe would not necessarily ask so clearly for in regular day-to-day interaction and operation. So by putting all of this pomp and circumstance of I send my ambassadors to make requests, we are undergoing a set structure and ritual. The important things are make simple requests, clear, unambiguous yes or no requests that can be given a thumbs up or thumbs down. Without too much bloat is helpful. But hey, if you give us a really big, squishy, ambiguous question and you get a, I don't know what the fuck to make out of that, that's also good quality feedback. And the tech here is really in the response, right? Yes, no, I'll try, or I don't know what you mean by that question. We've got to clarify it further. That answer doesn't need to be qualified in any way, shape, form, or fashion. You don't need to explain your response. It's actually really helpful, especially if you're running this in a bigger group with lots and lots of different groups. If you don't explain, it'll increase the tempo that you can get through the responses to these requests. And the information that you're offering, yes or no, is the important part. The decision-making criteria is definitely interesting. The challenge is, as soon as you start explaining yourself and justifying your answer, then you're inviting sort of debate. Is that true? Is that true? Is that true? Well, I disagree with this and that. The other reason that you're making that judgment call. And for the sake of clarity, the decision is the important part. The criteria, it really is yours, right? It enables you in this way to put up a boundary that is clear and unambiguous. And that can bring up you can respond to very turbulent stuff this way. So some of the applications that you can use this for is for sure coordination of work. Also, actually Emily on this call, I know that she has used it for role definition in work. So, hey, what are your expectations of me in this role? And what are my expectations of you guys as the one taking on this role? Also for dicier stuff. In this example of Baya, what could have been done, she could have asked some participants to take on the role. Just imagine they are taking on the role of participants, and imagine another subgroup taking on the role of being facilitators. And then, hey, in the event that something gets really bad, goes really sideways, and we need to do something about it, hey, this is, as a facilitator, this is what I need from you as participants in order to help me deal with that. And as participants, this is what we need from you as facilitators in order to feel good about how you address that and the fact that this stuff happened. So, we can also just take on hypothetical roles and make requests of hypothetical other subgroups so that we can, again, practice empathy for people that we may not feel like we're in that subgroup ordinarily. And that we can actually get some really good information sort of flowing. Deep Democracy has this exercise that's called shooting arrows, which is, I can't really find it in English anywhere. This is a really good proxy for shooting arrows. Is much more high energy, a little bit more dicier, much more fun, I think. But my point is, it's a way of bringing effectively a conflict of difference, of interest and difference into the visible layer of the group's awareness rather than it sort of being underneath the waterline and invisible. So that's a little treatise on what I need from you, and try it if you have a dicey, conflicty type of situation. Just make a couple explicit help requests, explicit requests of your counterparts, and see what the hell happens. Is there any structure I would like to dig into today? What do I imagine we might have the opportunity to bring up? I don't know. I'm just happy if people show up. So try to do that. Boom, shaka, leka, leka. Well, that was impromptu networking, gang, and we now are all friends. So once more, I'm going to drop the link to that doc just to make sure we're all working from the same source of truth. One question that we noticed was helpful in the last session is to on, I think, page 3, you'll see an image for the development phases in sort of liberating structures proficiency. So if you would change your name in Zoom to add on your development phase after your name, that will help us make explicit sort of what the differing degrees of experience we have in the room are. And I want to invite you to take up a particular membership role in accordance to that degree of experience. If there's anybody in the role with very, very little to no familiarity with liberating structures in the room, the cynics, help us to challenge assumptions, because liberating structures use does bring in a particular bias. So if you want to play the role of the devil's advocate, please do so. That will help us as a group. If you're in the optimist's role, right, if you're familiar with 5 or so structures, then help us out by asking for clarification at every turn. I, in particular, could be very presumptuous and will just throw out a structure like everybody knows what the fuck I'm talking about. So at any moment that something comes up in the conversation that is a method, a structure, or some subject matter that you're not familiar with, please raise your hand and say, can you clarify that for me? That will also help us as a group. If there's any super users in the house that are familiar with, a dozen, 15 plus liberating structures, then you can help us out by answering questions, especially that you haven't answered before. So when it comes to responding to or explaining structures, really try and lean in to the stuff that you think you may have some familiarity with, but you're not quite sure exactly how to explain it. And that'll help us and you grow. And for any minimalists in the house, then the invitation for minimalists is to make space for other people to answer questions, even though you probably know an answer, and then build on the input that is brought forth by others. So that's the invitation to take up these different membership roles. And like I said, if you want to throw your development phase after your name, that will help make all things clear and give you full reign to take up this role in as bad as you want to be. And with that, let me do it too, just to be that person. So let me dash in a moment. Nope. All right. And we're going to make use of wise crowds today. Does anybody, I know, let's just do it. Who wants to sort of walk us through a high level overview of how wise crowds go?
That is what we, Jared, that is what we just did, right? Or
No, that was
That was-
impromptu networking.
oh, okay, check, because I switch names sometimes.
Okay.
No, so I don't have an answer.
Cool. Awesome.
Okay, I'll try to introduce wise crowds. So wise crowd falls into the consulting bucket of liberating structures. The idea is that somebody might come up with a problem, and then other people will try to, first of all, get some clarification on the problem, and then maybe give some recommendation. So how it is actually being played out is the client will present his challenges, okay, and request for help. That will take 2 minutes. Then the consultants ask for clarifying questions. So the idea here is not necessarily to judge or to jump on conclusion or to immediately go to the recommendation side of things, but to ask clarification questions. Then the client turn his back. I mean, when you're in face-to-face, you turn your back to the consultants. What we'll do here is the client can just turn his or her camera off, and the consultants start to discuss among themselves and try to come up with a recommendation, and that will last 8 minutes. So the client, in the meantime, is listening to these recommendations, and the last phase of wise crowd is he turns again to face them, and then he tells them what was useful, what surprised them, what takeaway he or she has gotten from this exercise. So that is wise crowd.
Oh, and that made me think of actually a question to both of you. What is the difference with a Troika consulting in this sense? The most specific difference.
Yeah, the most specific difference is the number of people. So Troika is sort of intended to be done in trios, and wise crowds, you can expect to have more people typically play the consultant role in wise crowds. There's also, and Philip, that was great. Thanks so much for walking us through that. There's also an alternative wise crowd structure that makes use of very, very big groups, right? So that would run exactly as Philip sort of outlined. And then, but that initial round would sort of happen in a fishbowl. So there would be a larger group, like if there were 20 to 30 other people on this call, then they would just be observing that initial consultation. And then they would break into breakout rooms and they would consult on the consultation and sort of offer critique or alternatives, and then come back together and sort of deposit those additional advice statements to the client. So that's those would be the differences. And so our goal in this call is to come up with, to make use of not only Wisecrowds, but also a design storyboard that you see on the doc as well, and come up with a prototype for a string of structures in response to somebody's design brief. So my question to you, beautiful people, is do we have a design brief to work on today? Marta, did you say that you did?
I don't know if that's a design brief. There is something in my head that I've just designed. Well, maybe not just that. There is a session that I'm kind of thinking of that would bring the business, the stakeholders, and the technical team and the tech lead to the discussion where we need to communicate some changes to the release, or just kind of a high-level plan, and be able to not just communicate it to the people, but answer the questions, and do it obviously not in a chaotic way when everybody starts raising those questions, but to learn as much as we can from each other, including how maybe we can support that process and those changes.
Okay, so let me check and see if I've got the basics so far. So it sounds like your context is in sort of like an agile software development environment. Because I hear release trains, I hear product lead or architect, these type stuff. I hear technically type people. Is that right?
But there is a business as well. So we're talking about the changes to the roadmap, basically. Yeah.
Okay. So we're in a professional context with business and IT and the roadmap of what is going to be built in the future state. So that's sort of the context that we find ourselves in. And there are changes to the roadmap that need to be discussed. So it sounds like the intention of this session that you're describing is to not, like you said, not only share the information that there's been changes, but also make sure that the questions about those changes are asked and answered.
Yes.
Okay. And then as far as who will be participating in this session, you mentioned that there will be business and IT, and can you tell us a little bit more about who you'll need to participate in this session in order for it to be successful?
So we definitely need a technical lead who was highly involved in creating those changes and partially the roadmap together with the product owner. We need someone who is, let's call him a sponsor, kind of leading the whole team that consists of economists, and then there is like another role. So we want to invite all of them from the business of stakeholders who are using the system. They are the ones who might have the most questions, some concerns. They need to understand how that's going to impact them.
So the business stakeholders are the users of this system. Sounds like.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that's the basic nuts and bolts of the design brief, right? So we have the place or the context. We know that something about the participants, and we know something about our intended outcome or purpose. The other bonus piece of information is, do you have any ideas as far as structures or how you might set this up that you would like to seed us with or not?
Not yet, which is why I find this meeting very helpful, because I've, as I mentioned to all the people that I just interacted with, I've had some experience as a participant with the structures, but I don't really have any proficiency in terms of using the structures. But from my own experience as a participant, I can see a lot of value in them. So it would be great to use one or two. I mean, because I understand you can mix and match them.
For sure. And I also have an additional question about just baseline stuff. How much time would you want to devote to this conversation?
Yes, that's always a challenging part. It might be an hour. I don't know if we can get more than an hour.
All right. And then for my other fellow consultants, clarifying questions.
Maybe an obvious one, but it will be held online.
Sorry, Emily, I didn't hear that.
Oh, give me 1 second.
I said it's an obvious one, but will it be held online?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the number of participants?
It might be up to 40 people.
40. Okay.
Yes.
Check.
Okay, I will ask you a question. Like, what is the highest ranking member?
The highest. Are you asking about the title or?
I'm talking about the status. It's like you mentioned business. Where in the business who do you talk to? A vice president?
Yes, I guess that varies from a company to a company, because you can call someone managing director, but it's, I don't know, equivalent to vice president, for example. So we're talking about, but that's one person from that hierarchy will be involved. And the rest, as I mentioned, are the business users who are using the platform, and the development team.
Is it you talk about a platform and then you're talking about a roadmap? So where does the user come in here?
Sorry, say it again.
You're talking about a roadmap, right?
Yes.
And then
yes.
and now you're talking about a platform.
Yeah, I didn't use the right term here. Yeah, so we're talking about quite a big system and kind of supporting applications that have to become. We're rewriting the system that's been there for quite some time, adding some changes, and yeah, we've just learned that we have to modify the plan to make sure that satisfies the business.
How many? Sorry, please.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, thank you. How many types of stakeholders can you see participating in the meeting? Can you cluster them based on the benefits that they will have from the meeting?
I'm not sure if I understand correctly, but there are like two types of roles of the users of the system who are also the stakeholders, and one group represents economist side, and another it's a dedicated role that kind of supports the economist. So I would say two.
Okay, so one is the economist, and the other type is I didn't get it.
Yeah, it's a dedicated role. We call them panel managers, and now when we because you asked about the group, and Philip also asked about that hierarchy. So there is one person that kind of leads that whole team. So he's that kind of a vice president. So he will be present there as well.
Okay.
Excuse me, I didn't get the second role.
They called panel managers. Panel managers.
Huh?
Maybe I can write it in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine.
Oh, panel manager.
Okay. And what do they expect from the meeting? I mean, how do they get out of a meeting satisfied or unsatisfied? What's the variable for that?
Yeah, I guess the most important aspect is for us to make sure that we all have a clarity where we are heading to, what the plan is. So that part of communicating it with everyone who is involved, but for them to also be able to understand how that's going to impact them. Yes, they have their own worries. As I mentioned, there is a rewrite of the system. They want to know, for example, if they're going to have to, just to give an example, if they're going to have to do twice the job, yes, because the old system is still in place and the new will be up and running, or at least partially running. So there are some concerns.
Are you planning to use liberating structures?
Yes.
I would love to. I would love to, but I'm here. Maybe this is the time when I can ask questions, but no. But I would like to know if there is a way for me to actually use that session with liberating structures. Yes, to make it more productive for people to be heard, because I know that psychologically there is always people who are more confident. They're gonna ask questions. Those who might not. Yes, and we don't want to kind of keep going back to that all the time, but take the most of the session while it's there. Who knows when we will have the next opportunity in such big group.
Is it the end or what?
I mean, I have a feeling that I know enough to be dangerous and offer consultation. So, do you have another question?
I had another question, and yes, it was like in your organization, is the participatory culture something that is known and practiced, or is it very hierarchical with lots of function? Are you as a culture, as a company, are you used to discussing things with each other or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Well,
may I, Darren?
Yeah, please.
One or actually two.
Hold on. Let me mute myself real quick.
Yeah, cool. Who is your client for this workshop?
Client. That's an interesting question. So I would say that this meeting will serve, well, I guess what can serve each of us, but I wanted to serve those stakeholders for them to get the answers and clarifications. But as I also mentioned, maybe we can learn something together that will allow us to see how we can support those changes. And maybe each of us can contribute that way.
And who is the, is there a group of, or just an individual that has all the information already?
All the information?
Yes, you want to do an interactive session between the team and stakeholders, so IT and business. But are there people that do have more information than the rest, for example?
Yes. Yes. So So the technical leader is the person who has a lot of knowledge about the changes. And from the business perspective, there is that person, the highest in the hierarchy, if we have to talk about the ladder, who was initially involved in those conversations. Yes, so they do.
Check. Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cool. Well, Marta, then we'll ask you to mute yourself and turn off your webcam, and we will consult amongst ourselves. So our invitation for consultation is twofold. First question is, what structures come to mind to address this design brief, and how might we string them together, especially given our constraint of 1 hour? So what are the structures that come to mind when you think about this scenario in the first place?
You know, maybe what's what now what?
Yeah, I was thinking on celebrity interviews.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
I was thinking about what I need from you.
Oh, nice one as well.
And what? How many did she say? 40 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4 all would be is good to get to know each other around the prompt.
Yeah.
And that would sort of specify, you know, the dimension.
Totally.
And it could also be a nice one, UX Fishbowl. But I was also thinking about tris, but it is not actually a kind of a ceremony, but more if she want to develop or further develop a system, how could we screw up? That kind of question she could. Maybe, I don't know if I'm in the correct thinking mode, but no.
I could dig it. I think these are great. There's definitely, I line up with that. I think that just for the sake of not only practice, but also since Marta expressed that she's not super familiar with these things, we probably want to go through and unpack these guys that jumped out at us. So, Marcella, can you give us a quick overview of what, so what, now what?
I think let me check. But basically, it's a structure that works well also as a meta structure. I mean, in the what section, you say what's going on, what's happening. In the so what section, you try to understand and share the impacts of what's happening. And finally, with the now what section, you decide an action plan to follow to respond to the issue. Let me. I have to check again on the website. Just a second, because I don't remember exactly how it works in practice. So okay. Yes, if needed, describe the sequence of steps and show the ladder of inference. The ladder of inference is this metaphor for saying how do we apply a mental model to understand reality. So we start from facts, and then we pick up some facts and we try to understand from them to understand and to apply to a pre-existing model, and then we make sense of it. That's more or less, I mean, of course, that's very basic explanation of it. So we are trying to go through this ladder, and the first stage, individual work, 1 minute, and everyone reflecting on what's going on, and in this case could be what is the factor that is making us for a change. Why are we changing? What's going on? Are we unsatisfied? The client wants us to be more performing. So we try to a first reflection on that. Then small groups share the salient facts in like 2 or 3 people trying to gather the facts and share with the whole group, and then we go to the so what section, and we start again alone. Why is that important? What patterns or conclusions are emerging from the previous phase? Then in small group again, we try to gather and to find a common hypothesis. And then the final stage, again 1 minute alone, again, then again in small group, trying to find altogether a good action plan for the change. In this case, the change is already, if I understood correctly, is already planned, and but maybe it's not clear. It's not clear what's the involvement of everyone. So that could be the invitation. Next stage, the roadmap say, okay, we will change the way the user log to the system. What risk do you see? What kind of approach do you think it would be better? And so maybe something like that.
Sure. Awesome. I think that gives us quite a detailed overview of what now what. You suggested the celebrity interview.
Yeah.
How's that go?
How's that go? What the idea of that one is, and that's why I've asked, is there someone in the room that is the one that has all the information? So if you have one person, for example, a leader, or the one who is paying the bills, or a technical person that is like really having all the information, then she could put that one in the spotlight, and actually you could do kind of an Oprah Winfrey interviewing stuff, like asking or giving the people in the room sticky notes, or in that sense online, putting their questions in the chat, and then she could be, as a facilitator, the interviewer towards that person, and asking all those questions from the group towards the one with all the information, so the interviewee, I would say. And that really helps to clarify stuff and getting a shared idea on the topic. That's how I would say it in 1 minute. And yeah, the workshop could take 30 to 60 minutes or even longer if you have more questions. But it's a very simple one.
Yeah, and I would say there's sort of 2 different flavors to go about the celebrity interview. One is to do a lot of prep on the front end, to generate your list of questions. I mean, you'll need questions no matter what. The question about the questions is, do you want to come up with that list of questions all by yourself, or to what extent can you involve the participants beforehand to ask questions? I don't know if that'll work in this instance, because this sounds like it'll also have the connotation of being a bit of an announcement. So, if people don't know what the announcement is, how can they really ask questions? But maybe, I don't know, challenge that hypothesis. But if you can't ask questions, you can't generate questions in advance, you can use the users, you can split them into breakout groups and ask them to generate questions in those breakout groups and bring those back. It's a good alternative from, any questions. So that would be a good one. Very similar to the UX Fishbowl, which would, instead of asking the questions to one person who knows, so to speak, that would put the people that know the most in a fishbowl and have a conversation, more of a conversation amongst them about, hey, what's going on with this change? Why the change? Where did it? My favorite invitation for that is, tell me the story about the change, right? At what point did you realize you needed to change, and how did you decide about it? And what are your concerns, going forward? What problems or advantages does this create? And then same move, split people in the breakout rooms, come back with your questions, and then basically go through them. Philip, you brought in one, what I need from you. How might that be applied? And walk us through it.
In a straightforward manner.
Sure. Yeah. 60 seconds, gun to your head.
Okay. So first of all, this is a liberating structure that would fit the time frame. The principle is, when you have several different kinds of stakeholders and you need them to actually quickly come to realizing what the connections are between them. I think that's an excellent structure. So basically, the idea is that you put some you first organize people around their functions. So you would have people from IT, and maybe from IT you would have different kinds of people from IT. You would have the business people, but you organize them around their function. So it's a professional thing. And basically the prompt is to ask them to discuss together what they need in order to make the changes, or to make the roadmap more efficient. And the beauty of this thing is that it is expressed in a very simple, clear, non-violent, but extremely precise way. So what they have to come back with after they've been in breakout room is this sentence: what I need from you is. So what I need from you is, and that takes that, and then they elect a speaker or a spokesperson, and that lasts about 5 to 15 minutes, depending on how many groups you have. So what is interesting is, at this moment, the other people in the room take notes, about the request, but they don't give any answers or response. So here's somebody proposing and saying, I need to do that. We need this. Would you do this? What I need from you is this, etc. So everybody's taking some notes, and then the people from the group that have been called, so all the groups now have asked the questions. The way they answer the request is simply by saying yes, no, I will try, whatever. So you very quickly have an answer that is going to give you good direction, a good sense of the situation, and where things might go, or what should be taken more care of. So And let me see, the last thing is every spokesperson in the circle repeats the request made by him or her, then shares his or her responses, and there is no discussion, no elaboration, and that takes 10 minutes. And if you go to the liberatingstructure.com site, you will see that there is a segue to this, which could take the shape of what, so what, now what. And that would be if you have 15 minutes extra. So you can do it in an hour and 15 minutes.
What do you mean, this segue?
Well, there is the how do you debrief from this from all the information that have been given. You know, you can use that now.
Right.
That's right.
Okay. So on the back end, you would do a what, so what, now what, sort of in your functional group to debrief the sort of implications of the answers to your requests. I think I get you. Yeah. And the only thing to build on to add to that explanation, thank you, Philip, would be that once the requests are made, right, the representatives would go back to their groups and come up with an answer together. So you wouldn't answer sort of on the spot. So first you would make the requests of the other people, then you'd go back to your group, you'd talk about it, do like a 1, 2, 4 all, come back with an answer, and then send your representative back with your sort of, hey, we thought about it, and no, moving on. I think that's a really interesting one, especially given this shakeup. What I like about it, that I told everybody while you guys were in the breakouts I talked about what I need from you. And what I like about it is that it sort of ritualizes conflict, because it puts it in this straitjacket of like, ask 2 questions, say yes, no, I don't know, or whatever, or I'll try, and don't explain yourself. So it takes that conflict and it puts it in a straitjacket. So if you have a particular expectation that some people will be quite upset with these changes, then I would really encourage this one to make that upset explicit and give it some space, but not too much. And then the other structures that came up were 1, 2, 4 all, TRIZ, and I also added in 15% solutions. I think 15% solutions kind of serves the same role that Philip described, what, so what, now what, in that, what do we do in response to that? So 15% solutions really asks people to come up with an action that they can undertake with no extra authority, resources, or time. So based on reality as it is, what is one step you can take to not create a grand solution, but just 15% solution, the first baby steps. And then TRIZ, who surfaced TRIZ? That's you, Em? You want to give a whack at it?
Yeah, I would love to. In relation to this, change in the system, that is what I took out of the kind of a roadmap, and then see what we can build on. So how you could use TRIZ is to imagine the worst possible outcome there could be. So how could we screw up this new system, for example, or the changes in the system? And then from there on, I believe you have 3 steps. So answering like the worst possible outcome. I need to look up, I need to have my my IDs here. Then the second step is to so the second step is what are you doing currently from that? So the first one is like really the screw up version. Then okay, what are we currently already doing? And the third step is okay, but from what we currently do, what can we actually stop doing in order to improve in that sense. So there are 3 steps. It takes approximately an hour to work in. And it is actually, what I like about this one is that it's really fun, and people like could exaggerate in stuff they are thinking of. And that makes it like really fun and easy to talk with each other. Yeah.
Oh. All right, and then 1, 2, 4 all, the classic, the greatest hit. No matter what, I would say 1, 2, 4 all is almost necessitated in a group of 40 people. First, offer some question or some invitation. Give people a minute just to gather their thoughts. Have them have a short one-on-one conversation about the thoughts that came up. Take those pairs and double date them into groups of 4 to exchange notes on the thoughts that came up, and then surface the most salient and relevant points from that conversation into the large group. The challenge for 40 people in 1, 2, 4 all is that all has to be tightly time boxed, and you really need to prod all of those groups of, okay, with 40 people, there is enough different groups, that's 10 different groups, mind you, that every group maximum 1 item. So bring in 1 thought that you think is the most salient, the most relevant, and don't repeat any thoughts that have come up to the surface before, right? Otherwise, it's just will balloon. Even with those 2 like specific prompts, you're going to have to make sure that you have some mechanism to say, and that's your time, moving on to the next one. Because people, I mean, everybody likes the monologue. Maybe that's just me anyway. So yeah, so these are the structures that come up to sort of deal with this, change, to surface this information and digest it. I really like, Marcelo, your suggestion to think about what's a what as as more of a meta structure rather than sort of explicitly going at it. So this is the way that I would want to structure the whole hour time, whether or not we explicitly use the structure. Think about first giving people the facts, to help them make sense out of those facts, and then figure out what they need to do in response to that information is a really good, what I would describe as a narrative arc for that hour. And if we think about that, how might we string these structures together to accomplish this goal of, and remember, let's go back to the design brief. Our goal is, what is the new plan and what does it mean to me? That's kind of the landing that we want to stick for everybody as a result of this meeting. Any ideas on how we might string this stuff together?
So string the liberating structures together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Within the time frame of an hour?
Yeah.
No.
Nope. I like you, Philip. I like your style. Nope. Yeah. Yeah. There's a question as well about what tool. So Marta, real quick, what video platform are you using for this?
Teams.
Microsoft Teams.
Yes, not
Okay. That's all right. That's doable. So that takes what's relevant about that is that changes the prep that you would have to do for a lot of these things in very meaningful ways, right? When you think about trying to split people into like what I need from you, that requires a lot of front end preparation in order to do that. And for example, you would request that every group goes into their native Microsoft Teams environment in order to have their conversation. You wouldn't try and do that necessarily in breakout rooms, or you could, but you just need a lot of tech help on the back end, putting that together, like as the call is sort of going on. Let me try and just hot take. So I would probably start off with either the celebrity interview or the user experience fishbowl, just to give the information in the first round. Definitely a small, like, trios is ideal. Put people in trios and say, generate a question, just like, hey, generate a question. Any question is a good question, but come up with a question and then bring that back, just to make sure that you're giving time and space. I would say in trios, like 5 or 6 minutes is a bare bones. Is going to be really minimal to give people some time to go, whoa, what the fuck just happened there? Question. Like, remember, their brain is going to have to grok this new change, to help them make sense of it. There is an interesting case for what I need from you, but after you do the celebrity interview or the UX fishbowl, either one of those, your time is going to be pretty limited, because you can imagine, just probably, let's say you're short 10 minutes to brief them on what the nuts and bolts of the change is. 20 minutes probably, because you're going to want to give a little context and give a little on both the front side and back side about that change. So let's say 20 minutes, 10 minutes to generate questions and come back, or then you're already at 30 minutes before you've even started answering the questions that these groups have generated, right? And you may have some really hard and really awesome questions come in there. So you are sort of encouraged to take the time and space to digest that and figure out that what it does mean to you. When we think about this, the so what comes up for you guys? Which of these structures that we've discussed do you think makes the most sense to help stick the landing on so what?
1, 2 for all, maybe.
Definitely a good one, I would say. And your question is, Jer, so we have found out that she only has an hour, and we want a structure. And what would be the right string, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because what I feel is that 60 minutes is rather short. To have it to make sure it's a round session in that sense.
Yep.
So I'm struggling a bit with, okay, you have only 1 hour, but you want a round session. Yeah, so I'm a bit in a time squeeze for myself.
Yep, that's good feedback. And just give us a sec, Marta. Actually, if you could even turn off your camera, we're going to keep working on this string for you. I would definitely support that conclusion. 1 hour, if for such a large group to have a high quality of interaction. I mean, for sure, like if you're just talking about slide deck and any questions at the end, an hour is more than sufficient. But if you actually want to use this as an opportunity to ensure that everybody gets what the fuck is going on, and the hard questions about who in God's name thought this was a good idea, because that's the question that is going to be lingering in somebody's brain, and you're going to want to address, actually. I would say an hour and a half is kind of bare bones, but
bare minimum, yeah.
Yeah, but to build on your idea of next step for meaning making, why does this stuff matter? I would say 1, 2 for all in teams, I notice is a little unwieldy. I think offering everybody in the main session whatever amount of time to think for themselves, come together in a small group interaction, trios or quads, and then come back with, what this the meaning for themselves, would for sure stick the landing. The tough part there is the invitation is going to be the most critical factor, right?
So what are you going to instruct them to do?
Yeah. Exactly. What's the prompt that you want to give them in order to have that small conversation about what it means? Because it'll take some amount of time to show them the ladder of inference. So you'd want to sort of what implications is a good one, right? What are the implications? What does this literally going to mean to what I have to do? Consequences, and I really want to go at meaning, right? So what is the significance, consequences, and implications feels a little redundant. Does anybody have a third avenue who you would like to open them up around what does this mean?
I can imagine that asking questions and answering the questions could also lead to more questions. So I would suggest something like, is there anything we have just missed or something like that? And maybe that could come back because there are slow thinkers in there as well. So in that prompt of 1, 2, 4 all.
So what significance, consequences, and questions come up as a result of the previous fishbowl or whatever?
Yeah.
In response to the previous information. It's a little, I noticed questions is a little actually actiony. So I might want to park that for the now what.
Do we have to do the now what now? Because if she has very little time and you're going towards a sense making sort of exercise, then I think it would be interesting to harvest the sense making rather than jump immediately into like, okay, now guys, what do we do?
Yeah, totally.
Now what could be simply, okay, let's meet in the next month and we'll lay down a plan for it. So it could be something like that.
Word. So I think, yeah, I'm a little stuck on this invitation I noticed, right? So if I think about what is the significance, and maybe that's good enough. What's the significant and consequences of the previous information? Then
Maybe,
we're definitely, yeah.
Maybe we can phrase it in a more easy way, saying what's the meaning for you of this of the information we just shared? What's the meaning for you and your team? Don't know, huh? Just a proposal.
Cool. Meaning for you and your team.
And I have a question. Is it that you have an hour and you have actually only done, you have done the information sharing, but is that the purpose of the meeting, or should you have another meeting or discuss with the client what else should be done in that meeting?
Well, if we look back to our design brief, right, our outcomes were to discuss and clarify the changes to the product roadmap for a big information system. So what is the plan and what does it mean to me? So I think, yeah, for sure, Marcelo, you're going directly at what does it mean for me? Seems sage. Yeah. And then something in like 1, 4 all, 1, 3 all to gather that significance, especially what I think. So I'm of two minds about that. On one hand, it could be very interesting to put people in their functional silos and have them do that meaning making, that debrief on so what, But I think actually the best use of time, since there is a wide diversity of stakeholders, would be to mix them up at random. So that way you have developers, stakeholders, everybody across, just sort of mixed up together, understanding, oh, this means something different to me than it does to you. Actually, I'm going to have to do something different with this information than you will. And also being exposed to what it means to those different stakeholders is also good input to build empathy, so to speak. So, and that could be a good enough just to sort of, hey, get the information out there. I would say in 40 people, I would still want to reserve, I would still want to reserve 15 to 20 minutes for that debrief, which, even if we think about the most charitable view, 20 minutes to give the information, whether it's a fishbowl or a celebrity interview, 10 minutes to generate questions, another 10 minutes to answer questions, 20 minutes for this meaning making is pretty tight. But it could be done at the most minimal version. And then you would leave the now what basically to the functional groups, right? Go back to your team. And then you guys are going to have to figure out now what, basically on your own time. So that could deliver the brief on a sort of min-spec basis.
Yeah, just a remark about the distinction between the celebrity interview and the UX. I think it might not mean, for me, the fishbowl is just having a few celebrities, and I think that's very interesting. That people of different functions or different attitudes or approaches are asked the same questions. So you narrow the number of questions, like Jeremy said, and these questions I asked to these different people.
Oh, so you would,
yeah. So you actually get the 360 view on one question.
For sure, as the sort of tension field between deciding which one you might want to pick.
Mm-hmm.
So that feels like a good enough for now, safe enough to try. Marta, come on back and tell us what you think of the consultation. Are you able to take and run with any of this stuff?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for that. It was really, really interesting and lots of good ideas. There are a few that I think are worth trying here, but maybe just to start, you had a discussion about the duration, yes? So how much time is actually there available? In a way, I purposely challenged you. I don't know yet. So I said an hour, also kind of seeing how it works within the organization and how much time people often want to save. But that said, if you have like a plan, or you do that kind of a debrief and then go through everything that you want to be covered there and how much you can gain, it makes perfect sense to actually allow more time. And from the information that I've just gathered from you, that also allow me to negotiate that time. So thank you for that.
So we've given you ammo to lobby for more.
Yes, you have. Thank you very much. I like the celebrity interview concept there. It could really, really work. I am familiar with the what's what and the what. I've maybe used it for the retrospective in the past, kind of a similar concept. But I understand that after gathering all those questions, people want to know. So what's going to happen now? Yes, at the end. So that could be very useful. I absolutely love the concept. I think it was introduced by maybe Philip. What I need from you. kind of a nurturing approach to gather information. It's quite lovely. And yes, I agree about the tool. Teams can be kind of a pain in terms of splitting people into breakout rooms. It usually takes longer than Zoom. That's my only worry, is how kind of technically that would work. Because that's also maybe taking more time, or if there are any difficulties, but I guess you never know till you try it.
Yeah, I would say, given to speak to that specific challenge in Microsoft Teams, it actually doesn't have to be as complicated as it seems. I mean, really, if you think about, if you do the celebrity interview and you just want to go through a 1-4 all or a 1-3 all, you can use the same group constellation, right? Which makes it much simpler. So it says you would create the breakout rooms basically in the beginning or whenever, and then you wouldn't have to fuss around with moving any people around. It would actually be better to come back together with the same group of people you've already had some small interaction with, and then answer that question about meaning and significance. Especially in trios, that should help grease the wheels of the thing a little bit. But yeah, it's going to feel a little clunkier and awkward, and the timing is not as nice and crisp as with Zoom. But I mean, that's all right. But I think that's an overcomable challenge, let's say. So yeah, what I need from you would be a really interesting additional move to this basic thing. But so it sounds like, on a scale of 1 to 5, what do you think the probability is that you'll make use of this string?
One of the strings, you mean?
Yeah, that you would. So we talked for the most about a celebrity interview or a UX fishbowl mated with something like 1, 2, 4 all. On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being low, 5 being definitely going to give this a try, what do you think the probability is that you'll make use of this particular set of structures?
Yeah, I would say 4, close to 5, so high probability.
Cool. Righteous. Well, if you do run this workshop, it would be awesome if you come back and tell us what you learned, right? How did it go? What did you learn about the experience of running the workshop? Come and share the lessons with us. Would be super radical. So I only booked 90 minutes for this call, which puts us over the time box. So I will thank you guys so much for your time, attention, and energy, helping each other out, helping us all learn and grow. Maybe just a one-word checkout would be super rad. So how do you leave the space? And whoever wants to start starts, and whoever wants to end ends.
Inspired.
Inspired. Thank you. Who's next?
Writing the invoice.
Thank you.
I'm happy. I think that in little time for something that we are not prompted, told, that nobody knows before, I think it's a great session that you organize, and I think and it delivers. So this is really nice.
Mondays. Anybody else?
I enjoyed it. I like it. It was fun and nice to see it applied to a real problem.
Yes, I found it very informative, and I really appreciate Jeremy for you to create such opportunity. It's very useful, and as Marcela just said, bringing a real kind of a case scenario is what adds additional value to that. Yes, and if you can give it a go and give it a try, that's amazing. So thanks for that. Awesome.
Well, thank you for showing up. I leave super pleased with myself, if I do say so myself. And yeah, I think what I have a specific appreciation is just like how durable this pattern is, right? UX Fishbowl celebrity interview, and just the most basic debrief is like that's going to pay dividends, right? The amount of times that I can make use of that pattern is it never is going to get old, so to speak. I look forward to the opportunity for it to get old and feel boring and stale. So thanks again, you guys, for your time, attention, and energy. Make sure you like and subscribe. Tell all your friends that this is a resource that anybody can basically make use of. I mean, you don't have to have any familiarity with structures to bring a case for us to work on. And hope to see you guys next time.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Kushes.